forward. All right. Hello again and welcome everybody. This is College Application Process. Our guest presenter today is Rudy Sanchez from Pacific University. He's been there for 4 years in admissions, and before that was doing work. He'll share a little more about the work he was doing there before, and he's here to give us some really good advice and information. And so I'll turn it over to you, Rudy.
Thanks, Casey. Like you said, I'm Rudy Sanchez. I'm an assistant director of admissions at Pacific University, and this is my 4th year doing this. Before that, I was a student at Pacific. I am originally from Albany, Oregon. Went to South Albany High School. For those of you that may have heard of it, went to Pacific right after I finished there. I was a environmental bio major, coaching minor. I also ran cross country and track for the team as a student. And then afterwards, I spent 2 years helping low-income first-generation students apply to schools. I'm a first-gen student, low-income student myself. I had zero idea of what I was doing when I was applying to schools, and I actually got to help others do the same. And so, I continue to pay that work forward because I was lucky enough to have somebody when I was in high school help me. And so now I get to continue that great work that I've been doing since then. So today it's a little bit more of the same, talking about the college application process. I've had experience helping students from all grade levels, mostly juniors and seniors, but I am so glad to have all of you here today to talk about applying to college. Okay. Can you all see the PowerPoint?
I can. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So, generally the first part of this process starts with the search, figuring out what schools are out there. There are over 3,000 schools in this country right now, more around the world. And, mostly I kind of want to start off with, schools have, I kind of want to differentiate between different types of schools because no school is the same. And so one way that they differ are, the size, different things include size, if they're public or private, if they're in or out of state, and so a little bit about each area. So size, they usually are categorized in large, medium, or small, and that's different for each student. And they all have their pros and cons. So for example, the big schools in Oregon are Oregon State, U of O, Portland State. Medium-sized schools, think more Western Oregon, Southern Oregon kind of territory there. And then the small schools in Oregon are generally the private ones. So Pacific's one of them. So is Linfield, George Fox University, and and then other ways that they differ: public or private. So public means they're being funded by the state. So we have, I believe, we have a handful of schools in the state that are public. Oregon's one, so is OSU, Portland State, Western and Southern and Eastern are all. Oh, and OIT, we have 7 state schools. We have around at least 10 private schools in Oregon, including Pacific. And so another thing about the process is, you guys figuring out what you want from a college. Do you want a big school? Do you want one that's in state or out of state? Do you want one that, offers a certain major or a certain style of teaching? That is, these are all things you guys are going to have to figure out for yourselves. And honestly, the best way to do it is to go out and see what different kinds of schools there are. And, like I say on here, the more schools that you apply to, the more likely that you are to be admitted to one. And the idea between the tips I'm going to highlight in this process is that you are going to be admitted to a handful of schools, and then you'll hone it down to make a choice between 2 or more schools. And feel free to fire questions and as they come up. So what I recommend to students is to create a top 5 list. And I really like working with juniors in my time and working with students at the high school level, because junior year is the best year to set yourself up for success so that there's way less stress that last year of high school. So you don't have to do everything all in one year. And a great way to start that off is by creating a top 5 list. And I have some parameters here to help with you guys. These are by no means written in stone, but you want to have a wide range of schools. You don't want to, like I tell students all the time, do not apply to all 8 Ivies, which are the 8 most elite schools in the country. That is not gonna help you in the long term. And I know from experience, all 8 Ivies are different, and they're not all going to give you the same thing. So really figuring out what you want from a school and then going from there, but also have some options there to really really help you down the road there. So I recommend to all students, especially if finances are a concern, to apply to at least one school in your home state. I get it. I wanted to leave home too. Valid concern, but you definitely want to make sure that you're applying to at least one school where you're going to get that in-state financial aid package. Because if this past year has taught us anything, that anything can happen at any time. Also, one school should be out of state, though. You never know what's out there, and don't write off a school just because it's from out of state. They may be able to offer you a pretty generous financial aid package. Most of our students from Pacific are from out of state. And so, our students every year are able to find ways to finance their education here, even though they live farther away. So definitely look at one school not in Oregon. At least one school should be public. So one of the 7 public schools that I have listed, oh man, I should have made that a slide. Anyway, but yeah, you want, public schools tend to have lower price tags at the beginning of the application process, but also know that they don't always give it as much in aid as compared to private schools. So, but they do have a cheaper sticker price, as we like to call it. So definitely that would be a good option. They also tend to have more options in terms of majors. So that is another great benefit of going to a public school. At least one school should be private, like Pacific. University of Portland's another one, as you can see on here. And yes, we have a higher sticker price, but that does not always mean that those schools are more expensive. I paid $5,000 a year to go to Pacific each year out of pocket. And that's including loans, work study, and all my financial aid. So, I got a really great financial aid package, and I was able to get a high quality education as a student here. So do not write off a school just because it has a high sticker price, because you don't know the only way you're really going to know how much you're going to pay to go to a school is if you apply and fill out the FAFSA, fill out the ORSA, and apply to scholarships. At least one school, this is different for each student, but at least one school can be selective, which means 30 to 60% acceptance rate. And schools like that tend to give out good aid packages on average, and they tend to have a high quality education. And then one can be very selective. This is like Ivy League tier. If you really want to go for that, more power to you. Do not bank on all 8 very selective schools. That is something that I do not recommend. In terms of applying and quantity, I recommend at least 5 schools and no more than 8. After that, they all kind of start to mesh together. You really don't want that. You want to be able to hone in on what particular factors really matter to you. I know students every year where weather is the most important thing to them, or they need to have a certain kind of restaurant near town, or they need to have this certain major that is really niche, and maybe not a lot of schools offer it. So figuring out what is important to you and using that to figure out what schools you're going to apply to is really going to help you narrow it down. In terms of the application itself, we have multiple pieces here. First off, the application itself, so a lot of more schools are going towards something called the Common App, which is an application used by schools in every state, and more schools get added to it each year. Oregon State added itself to it, I believe 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. The year before, or the University of Oregon added itself to it. And so what you can do on there is juniors, you can already go on and create a profile, put in your name, your address, simple information like that. And then starting fall of your senior year, you can apply to schools. And the great thing about it is that once you fill it out once, you can use that information for any other school that uses Common App too. You just have to sit down and do it right the first time. You can always go back and edit it later. But definitely it's worth that time, because after that it is smooth sailing. It takes way less time after you do it once. And we will also, one thing, especially after this year, is to check to see what the SAT and ACT requirements are for each school. A lot of schools are going test optional now. Pacific's test optional now, and that I personally think that is great. But you definitely want to you do not want to assume that for every school. You need to look into it and see, okay, do you require test scores to be accepted? And also see if there are requirements for merit aid. At Pacific, our students can get the top merit scholarship without taking the SAT or ACT. We will still take the scores if you have them, but it is just one piece that we look at. We really use a holistic approach when it comes to looking at your application and awarding you merit aid. So, but that is not the case for every school. And you want to make sure that you, if you do need to take the test to prepare, not only to register for it, but to also study for it. Transcripts, every school is going to require high school transcripts, and your counselors and teachers will let you know how you need to do that, because it is different at each high school, and they need to come from someone that works at the school. Unfortunately, schools cannot accept transcripts from students directly. We need to, in order for them to be official, they need to come from a counselor or a teacher or the registrar at your high school. One letter of recommendation, letters of recommendation. Most schools require one or two. And you will need to request them in advance. It was a little harder this year for students as a whole to get their recommendations in, but we need at least one to be at Pacific. We need at least one to be academic, so from a teacher or a counselor, and do it from a teacher or a counselor that knows you. Someone who you've taken class with and you have a pretty good relationship with, because you want them to be able to write you a strong letter of recommendation that really speaks well to you, both in and out of class. And if they don't know you, that's kind of hard to do. Plus, teachers and counselors are busy people. You want to make sure that they are able to, be able to write you a letter on top of everything that they're already doing, especially in the past year that we've had. And then the essay. So the essay is the one part of the application where you can really show the teach the counts or something, or show off something that's not anywhere else on your application. So it is really the one place where you use your voice. You're not just rattling off GPAs or classes that you've taken or your extracurriculars. You can really put yourself on the map by putting pen to paper or typing it up in this case. And it's not always the most it's not always the thing that's looked at the most prominently, but it's what I like to say to students is an essay can turn a no into a maybe and a maybe into a yes. Also, it is, at least in Pacific's case, it is looked at for other scholarship opportunities. If you are a strong writer, that is going to get noticed. It can go a long way to maybe recommending you to other aid resources.
Hey, Rudy, there's a one question. If a teacher that a student had in high school and then they leave for senior year, can that teacher still write the letter of recommendation?
Yes. In Pacific's case, we just need to know that they've taught you in at least one class, or they're your counselor.
Thank you.
Great question. A few pieces of advice I have for students. Work on your essay. I should have corrected that. Work on your essay junior year. Do not wait till senior year. I cannot emphasize this enough, guys. Because every year I have students that tell me, I am done with the application. I am just writing my essay, and they stall for months. Do it during junior year, please. Do not put yourselves through that. I know essay writing is a little tough sometimes, but if you put in the time, it is going to pay off so well in the future, because when senior year comes around, you just copy and paste it onto the essay prompt area and you are done. And this way you can also have other people look at it too and give you feedback. The prompts are up on the Common App website each year. You can look at them all, see which one you can write the strongest essay about. And And, and I've helped students this past year write their essays. Like, hey, can you look it over? And I said, yeah, of course. And because I did that with my seniors, I would look over every piece of their application before they submitted it. And I'm happy to do the same for you guys. Start looking for scholarships. I am called scholarship guru on my team because I have a huge list of outside scholarships that I send to all my students, parents, and high school counselors. Uh, and Ms. Cherie has my list, Casey, just FYI. and and so I send them out I send out the monthly list to my students. Every month they get a list of scholarships they can apply to. And there are scholarships out there for high school juniors, and not a lot of people apply to them, and as well as the other grades. So if you are not a senior, odds are you can apply for a scholarship, and you'll probably not have a lot of competition. And so the people that generally go to college for free are not. There are a few students each year that win the big scholarships, like the Foot Locker one, or the Burger King, or Dr. Pepper, those big giveaways. But usually the ones that go to college for free are the ones that win a bunch of little scholarships that are worth $500 and $1,000 each, but they win a lot of them. And then the difference between what they got in financial aid and their remaining balance goes way down, if not all the way down to zero. I have a kid from Monroe who is a junior this year. He is paying $0 to go to Pacific right now. He cleaned up in local aid at his high school graduation. I know because he invited me and I went. And so he put in the time. He applied to a bunch of aid, and he is having the time of his life at Pacific right now, not having to worry about having to pay to go here. So also in that vein, ask for fee waivers. Most schools will have a way to get so that you can apply for free. And any student that asks me for a fee waiver, I give it to them. I do not want cost to be a barrier. That's why I have that scholarship list and I send it out to families. That's why I make sure that you can apply for free. And I show, and so, if you need help with that, we can set up a Zoom and we can share screen. I will walk you through that entire process. Being involved, us counselors, we have a pretty good knack of picking up on what students really care about. And so, if we see that you do a sport or a certain club for years, or you started something from scratch, like that shows us, okay, this kid really cares about this, and they should probably continue to do this at the college level. That's something you can't fake. We can tell when it's the real thing, and that's what we really want to see shine through on your application. And it doesn't have to be a club or a sport. It can be, if you really like to work, put that on there. If you're really involved with your church or you helping your family business, that all counts. And so, we just want to know how you're spending your time. And, and also it shows, what you really care about. Applying to four-year schools first. On that 8 list, you can put community college on there. I know you guys have Blaine down in Eugene. And then LB is another close option too. But 4-year schools tend to have earlier deadlines. And so I recommend that you apply to those first. And then, make a master Excel sheet or a Google Doc sheet about all the schools that you want to apply to and each deadline, as well as deadlines for scholarships. Visit schools. I know that's a little tricky right now with certain schools, but Pacific's currently doing in-person tours. I gave a tour last Friday in lovely weather, by the way. And so the best way to get to know if you really want to go to a school is to visit it. There's no substitute for that in-person tour, because you really get a good feel for what it's like, especially if you go on a weekday and there are students there, because then you'll see what it's like on a normal day for students. And so you can contact each school that you're applying to, say, hey, are you doing in-person visits? And if they say yes, you can set one up. And most schools right now do have virtual tours, so you can at least get the feel for it virtually. You guys can send me any questions you have. I've helped students figure out what schools they should apply to, whether they're Pacific or not. Of course, I would love to see you all apply to and go to Pacific, but I know that's not realistic. I would rather see you go somewhere than nowhere. And so if you need help reaching a counselor at a certain school, or you need me to read your essay, or, if you need help finding scholarships, reach out to me. I'm a resource for you guys. I want to help in any way that I can. And, and so my email is on there, rsanchez@pacificu.edu. And I'm going to put my info on the chat so you guys can copy and paste it. as well as a Google Doc. So if you guys want to learn more about Pacific or you want to get my scholarship list, I send it out to all my students on my list each month. I can put you on that list so that you guys can get that starting senior year. But thank you so much for coming. And, I'll open it up for your guys' questions now.
Rudy, we had a question about the essay. What is the most important thing to have in an essay?
Yes, it's a great question. The most important thing about the essay is that it is about you. So even if it asks something like, talk about someone who's really influenced you, you do not kind of want it to be what we refer to as a book report about that person. So if it's about MLK, yes, we know he gave we know he gave fantastic speeches and did so much for civil rights. But it's about how did he influence you, and what did you learn from him, and your day, and how you reflecting the lessons that he's taught people in your everyday life. The essay should be 10% about an outside source, 90% about you. And so I've seen students make this mistake where they basically give me a book report on a famous figure, and that's not really what we're looking for in those essays. Or if it's about talk about a cause you care about, and I learn about environmentalism, which is great. I love environmentalism. I was an environmental science major, but I didn't learn about the student. This essay so that the main point about the essay is that we learn about you. I know it seems a little weird talking about yourself, but that is really what it's there for. And the essays that really jump out, they take us there to a certain time or a place in their lives where we genuinely learn something new in general or about them, or both. And those are the essays that definitely, get get remembered, and it makes us like, yes, this kid, we need to accept this kid because this was unbelievable.
We had another